Hello and welcome to my first wedding day with the Nikon Z6III. On my camera here, I have the 40mm f2. Soon, this 40 will be replaced by the 35 f1.4 that was just announced a couple of days ago. I've been using the Z6III for a few weeks now. I had the opportunity to use the pre-production version, and now this is my own production model that I did buy at BJ Photo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Shop there if you're nearby. So this isn't a sponsored video by Nikon or a free camera. This wedding day is a little bit different. It is 2 hours total, and I'm actually the second photographer for my wife, Lindsay.
Okay, time to be a photographer.
One nice thing, we shot in a heat wave last week and I had 3 weddings and it was 35 degrees Celsius, so like 100 Fahrenheit basically. And 2 of them were outdoor ceremonies as well, and it was not the most fun I've ever had as a wedding photographer. Those videos will be coming soon, but that's before I had the Nikon Z6III. If it's your first time coming to the channel, I'm Taylor Jackson. I have photographed over 1,000 weddings in my career, and I run a pretty high volume studio doing both photography as well as video coverage. And a lot of the time, I'm gonna say like 80-90% of my weddings now are all photo video coverage days. Today though, just pictures. And I do have a bit of a unique offering coming out. So it's not officially on sale yet, although if you do want to get one of the pre-sale units, you can sign up right now, and the course will be released on July 7th. And it is how to become an educator in the wedding photography space. So that includes what we do here on YouTube, as well as how to get hired and flown out to conferences and events to speak on stages and to share your expertise as a photographer. So if that is something that is interesting to you, I have a full course on it. It's everything that I have learned. I've been a speaker at larger conventions since 2011. And I've been making videos here on YouTube since 2009, I guess. It's been a minute. So I've learned a lot, and I continue to be active and investigating new opportunities in the industry, and it's everything that I have learned. So if you do dream of doing this YouTube thing, or if you want to be a speaker on stages, check out that course. There's only 100 of them available, and it's only available until July 14th, which is my birthday. So get in before then, get one of those 100. If the 100 are gone before July 14th, the sale closes a little bit early. And as always, a 100% money back guarantee. So if you sign up and it's not for you, wasn't what you were expecting, send me an email and I'll send your money back. If it's your first time investigating the Nikon Z6 Mark III, the autofocus is great. So if you're reading older reviews of maybe the Z6 original or the Z6 II, in low light, it definitely suffered, as well as just face and eye detect. It worked pretty well, but it was nowhere really close to Sony or Canon. Now I am very happy to say that Nikon, I see really no differences in real life when I'm using a Nikon camera versus Sony camera versus a Canon camera for autofocus. And that means that they're all really, really darn good. One of the benefits of Nikon and this camera is that you can easily cycle between faces. Some other cameras won't allow you to do that. So if the face detect selects somebody, you can bounce to the left or the right. If it's not the person that you wanted to select, you can also customize your focus boxes as well. And when you do this, face and eye detect only work within that box. So for ceremonies, it's really nice because you can just set up a little grid to only get people that are coming down the aisle. And that gives you a little bit more control and less of a chance that if it identifies a face that it thinks might be the main subject, it's not going to veer off and pull someone out of the audience, that you've just kind of set that box around where you want the autofocus system to work. The ergonomics of Nikon, I'm so happy with. This camera feels really, really nice. So the ZF, also an incredibly capable wedding photography camera, but it just doesn't feel quite as good as this Z6III, especially if you're going to be using larger lenses. So using this 40 f2 on a ZF, maybe not a big deal, but as soon as you get to maybe the 50-1.2 or a 70-200 or the Tamron 35-150, you're going to start feeling a little bit of fatigue. It's fine if it's just for a part of the day, or if it's for the ceremony, you can put up with it on the ZF, but this is just a better all-day wedding tool, I would say. If I had the choice between the ZF and the Z6III, I think that I would go Z6III now, even though the ZF looks really cool. I think maybe the ideal kit, maybe this resonates with you, is that the main camera that I would be choosing for a full wedding day would be the Z6III. But then a secondary camera, and also the camera that I would be using for travel and for my personal content, would likely be a ZF. The form factor is a little bit smaller, and it's just, I don't know, it's a little bit nicer to look at overall. No offense to the Z6III, but the ZF just, it looks really nice. On the Z6III, you do get a fully articulating screen, so this is a bit of a controversial point. I know a lot of people like just the regular tilt screens, but I think more people, especially if you're into video production, definitely prefer the fully articulating screen. For me, as someone that creates a lot of YouTube content, it's also very important for me to have a screen that faces myself. While I do trust the automatic settings, and if you're in aperture priority mode, it's probably going to get you pretty close most of the time. If you are out self-filming, you pretty much have to review every single clip if you don't have a screen. But that might be outside of the scope of what you want to do, but unfortunately you don't get a choice whether you get a tilt or you get a fully articulating screen. You just only get the fully articulating screen. I shoot this camera in manual mode pretty much all the time. I think this comes from the fact that I also do video a lot of the time as well. So I just like to have those video files locked in. So if a dress or a suit walks in front of my camera, the settings aren't going to automatically adjust to compensate for that. If I am in a mixed lighting environment, or if there's really tiny clouds and it's a variable cloudy day, I will switch to aperture priority, or today I might even shoot aperture priority. Or another option is if you want to lock your settings and you want to go into automatic ISO, I think that's fine as well. The reasoning that I do feel a little bit more comfortable being in manual mode is because sometimes your shutter speeds can get away from you a little bit. You can also customize the lowest shutter speed possible. So if you're in aperture priority, I think by default, it's never going to go lower than your focal length. So if you have a 40mm lens on here, it'll go down to 1/40 or maybe 1/50 if that's the closest number of a second. So you're never going to be below that, but I find that 1/50th of a second maybe isn't ideal when people are moving in front of me or walking down an aisle, or even just doing a first look in a lower light environment. So I like to set my shutter speed where I want it to be. I pretty much never really touch my aperture at all. I'm pretty much just always wide open on every lens that I use until given a reason not to. If I'm doing family photos and there's 2 or 3 rows of people, I'm obviously going to stop down for that. But if I am just doing my day-to-day wedding photography activities, I'm usually wide open. This also is based on distance as well. So your depth of field is based on how close you are to a couple. So even if you're at f2 and I'm 100 feet away, everything's going to be in focus. But if I am 3 inches away, I don't know what the minimum focusing distance is of this, not 3 inches. But if I'm much closer to the couple, obviously the depth of field is going to get smaller and just their eyes are going to be in focus. If there are 2 of them and I'm a reasonable distance, 10 feet away, and I'm shooting wide open, usually both of their faces will be sharp enough to make me happy. And overall, I just really enjoy the shallow depth of field look to my images. Some other notable features for the Nikon ecosystem in general is the back access to all of the f-mount lenses, or most of the f-mount lenses. There are a lot of past lenses that I really love that have not yet been replaced as a Z version, and also some that have been replaced and maybe they're different or maybe they're too expensive. Like I don't really need a 51.2, but I really love the 58 f1.4, and it's very nice to be able to use that through the FTZ adapter. I think if you are moving from DSLR, it makes the transition a lot easier because you can get the adapter and you can use all your DSLR glass. Your DSLR glass, if it is autofocus, will actually work probably better on your mirrorless camera than it will on your DSLR, or it ever did. You also don't have to fine tune it. AF fine tune is something I had to do for most of my lenses, and I would go in, I would shoot a chart, and I would move the focus around on DSLR. And with mirrorless, you don't have to do that because on mirrorless, it is reading the autofocus from your sensor, and rather than bouncing off a mirror to try to estimate how far away the subject is. The way I set my Z6III up, I actually put a setup video up last week. The things that I changed, so I obviously go into raw photography. That's the first thing I do. I set both cards to read for raw photography. I am so hopeful that at some point Nikon will allow me to record video files to both card slots. Right now it only goes to one, and that is very sad for us video shooters. Your photography files, your raw files, can write to both cards simultaneously. I set it up to be raw plus JPEG, and what I do with that JPEG is I will use it for offsite backup when I get home. So raw files are obviously a bigger file size. JPEGs, within a couple of hours, maybe even an hour after the wedding, I can have everything backed up completely offsite, and I really love to be able to do that. The raw files are obviously what I will be editing from. Sometimes I will, over the app, I'll pull a JPEG post on the day, but the main reason that I'm shooting raw plus JPEG is to use the JPEGs as an offsite backup. The raw files, any Nikon camera, are amazing. I absolutely love the files on this Nikon Z6III. I've also just been shooting mechanical shutter only. I don't know if there's any sort of file change when you go to electronic shutter. The potential negatives are if people are moving fast, or if there's some weird banding, that this camera has been first designed for mechanical shutter, and then also the ability to do silent shutter if needed. If I'm shooting a silent shutter camera, I'll obviously keep it, I have no choice, but I will keep it on silent shutter all the time, and I've had no problems. But for today, I will be shooting everything that you're going to see on mechanical shutter. Other things I changed when I set this up, so there's 2 buttons, 2 function buttons down here, 1 and 2, right beside the lens. And I will set one, I think the top one comes set to white balance as default. I will change that to go from FX mode to DX mode so that I'm able to get a little bit of bonus reach out of lenses if needed. It's just simply cropping in my camera. I'm not actually changing the focal length in any way. It's just simply cropping and saving me the step in post-production. The bottom button I will leave set to focus mode. So if you hold the bottom FN2 button down, the front wheel will go between focus areas. And that means primarily for me, so if you do want to use one of those small boxes to only let let the autofocus work within that box, you can do that. For me, I pretty much go from wide points, and then if something becomes really tricky, I will go quickly into 3D tracking. So it is just the one on the left here. You can also go into your settings, and if there's autofocus area modes that you just don't want to exist on your dial, you can get rid of them and they just won't show up whenever you're scrolling through. So I only use autofocus with all wide points or 3D tracking. It's pretty rare for me to use anything else. And then on the back wheel, holding the same button, you go between autofocus continuous to autofocus synchro to manual focus. I shoot all day on pretty much all of my cameras now on autofocus continuous. And then the last thing I changed straight out of the box, it comes set to automatic ISO. And the way you get out of that is you hold the ISO button that's up here and you just use the front wheel and you go either left or right, and that turns it off into on auto ISO. I like this method a lot more than the way that other companies do it. So other companies, if you're going all the way down and you get to whatever your minimum ISO is, and then you go one beyond that, you go into auto, which in some instances will be like, okay, here we go, back up to full gain because you're in a dark environment. I like having automatic separated from those settings so that I'm able to just enable it or disable it if I want, or have full control. So there it is, first wedding, Nikon Z6III. Hope you enjoyed. Short day today. On my way home, I actually have an engagement shoot tonight, so I'm going to be using the 58 f1.4G on that engagement shoot, so stay tuned for that video coming soon. And if you are interested in becoming an educator in the wedding photography space, whether that is here on YouTube or you want to be on stages and getting paid and flown out to go to events and talk to people about wedding photography, everything that I have to tell you has all been recorded. It's 3 hours long, it's a lot of information, but it will tell you everything you need to know, from what people get paid to speak and also what I get paid here on YouTube, better ways to monetize, and how to become an ambassador for companies, everything that you need to know about the educational space. And then a 100% money back guarantee. So if you get that course, it's just not for you, let me know, send me an email and I'll send your money back. It comes with a lot of bonuses though, up until July 14th. So get one of those pre-order spots right now if you want. The full course becomes available on July 7th, but you can buy it now and you can get the slot. I'll just open up the course on July 7th. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.